Imagine this. You are traveling in a beautiful foreign city. Suddenly, your phone battery dies, Google Maps stops working, and you are completely lost.
Would you know how to ask a stranger for help in English? Welcome to the LevelUp English Podcast. Today, we are giving you the ultimate survival guide. We will teach you the exact polite phrases you need to ask for directions, and more importantly, how to understand the answers so you can find your way back.
So picture this. You are staring at your phone, right? You're watching that little blue dot on the map, and then it just stops moving.
Oh, the worst feeling.
It really is. You tap the screen, nothing happens, everything goes black, and suddenly you're standing on some random street corner in Tokyo or like a massive chaotic intersection in Berlin.
Yes, surrounded by signs you totally can't read.
Exactly. Your phone is completely dead. And for most of us, that device is basically our entire external navigational brain. It's gone. So, what do you do?
I mean, it's a sudden plunge into the analog world, isn't it? Like, for an AI like us, navigating space is just a simple matter of, querying a database. We get absolute latitude and longitude coordinates back in milliseconds.
Right, it's just raw data.
Yeah. But humans, well, they used to navigate through this whole combination of memory and physical maps.
Yeah.
But modern humans, they've almost entirely outsourced their spatial awareness to digital systems.
Completely. We rely on the GPS for everything.
So when that system fails, you literally lose your connection to the physical geography around you. You're forced to fall back on this really ancient protocol, which is spontaneous, unstructured data gathering from the random people around you.
You actually have to talk to a stranger.
Which is terrifying for a lot of people.
Oh, yeah, it's a nightmare. You have to ask for directions in English, formulate this query that a random person on the street is actually going to understand, and then somehow, process the absolute barrage of spoken information they throw back at you.
And that exact scenario is the foundation of our deep dive today. We're looking at a comprehensive master guide on travel and survival English.
Specifically focused on the actual mechanics of getting yourself unlost when that digital safety net just vanishes.
Yeah, and we are really going to slow down the analysis of this whole process today, because the source material doesn't just treat asking for directions as like a simple list of vocabulary words you need to memorize.
Right. It's not just say this phrase, get this result.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It frames it as this incredibly complex psychological and social transaction, because navigating a foreign city, it requires understanding the social dynamics, the hidden rules of urban engagement, and the cognitive load you're suddenly placing on both yourself and this total stranger.
So let's set the scene. The moment you realize you're lost, you're standing on the sidewalk, people are just rushing past you. And the instinct, I think, for a lot of people in a panic is to just grab the first person they see and shout the destination.
Oh, for sure. Just to get the information as fast as possible.
Yeah. But the source explicitly warns against this. You absolutely cannot just walk up to a human and yell, "Where's the station?"
No, you really can't.
Like, from an AI perspective, if I get a text prompt that just says train station, I process it immediately. I don't need pleasantries. I don't care if you say please. I just deliver the route.
Right, you just output the data.
But human cognition requires a completely different approach.
It really does. Because shouting a destination at a passerby, it registers as an aggressive disruption. We have to look at the psychology of the urban environment here. When people are walking down a busy city street, they are usually in this state of focused internal processing.
They got their headphones in, they're thinking about work.
Exactly. They're thinking about their commute, their personal stresses, their attention is shielded. So when you abruptly insert this loud, direct demand for information into that shielded state, you are forcing them to perform uninvited cognitive labor.
Uninvited cognitive labor. I love that phrasing.
Yeah, and it triggers a natural defensive mechanism. They will likely just ignore you or speed up their walking pace or maybe just offer a really dismissive response just to escape the interaction.
Just to get away from the threat. So bypassing that defensive mechanism, it requires the proper credentials. I was reading this and I sort of look at it like a digital handshake protocol.
Oh, that's a great analogy.
Right. Like when two computer systems connect, they initiate a handshake to establish the rules, verify identity, make sure it's a secure connection before any actual data is transferred.
Yeah, you don't just dump the file immediately.
Exactly. Shouting your destination is basically a brute force attack on a human firewall. It gets blocked. Saying, "excuse me," is presenting the correct security credentials.
The source actually calls this the magic opener.
The magic opener. It signals to the stranger's brain that you are, a polite, benign entity requesting a temporary connection.
And the source suggests layering those credentials to further lower the stranger's defenses. So using phrases like, "Excuse me, sorry to bother you, but..."
Oh, the apology is key.
It is.
Yeah.
Because those words act as vital social lubricants. Acknowledging that you are an inconvenience immediately disarms their defensive response. You're validating their time and their personal boundaries before you even make your request.
It totally shifts the dynamic from a demand to like an appeal for help.
Exactly. But the phrase that really stands out in the source, the one that's super interesting is, "Excuse me, I think I'm lost."
Okay, yes, I was turning this over in my head earlier. Because if your phone is dead and you don't recognize any landmarks, and you have literally zero situational awareness, you don't think you are lost.
You're definitely lost.
You are lost. It's an objective, verifiable reality. So softening that absolute reality with, I think, it seems like you're introducing this unnecessary ambiguity into the interaction. Like, why not just state the fact?
Well, that ambiguity actually serves a highly specific psychological purpose. Because stating "I am lost" is this absolute declaration of a crisis.
Right. It sounds like an emergency.
Yeah, and it can subconsciously feel like a massive burden is being placed on the stranger, like you have a crisis, and now they are obligated to solve it.
Oh, I see.
But softening it to "I think I'm lost" intentionally downplays the severity of it. It makes you appear less demanding and, honestly, much more vulnerable.
It triggers empathy instead of anxiety.
Precisely. Vulnerability is such a powerful connector in human social behavior. When a native speaker hears, "I think I'm lost," they don't perceive a threat or an overwhelming demand. They see a fellow human experiencing just a momentary lapse in orientation.
It's relatable.
Very relatable.
Oh.
And that slight hesitation in your phrasing, it invites them to step into the role of the helper. It activates what psychologists call the helper's high, that little psychological reward humans get from performing a low-cost act of altruism.
So the politeness and the vulnerability, those are basically the necessary metadata that tells the listener how to categorize your requests.
Exactly. So, okay, the firewall is down. You deployed the magic opener, you showed a bit of vulnerability, and the stranger has actually stopped walking. They're making eye contact and they're waiting for your query.
Which is a huge victory in a big city.
It is.
Yeah.
But the source emphasizes that the way you formulate this next sentence, your actual question, dictates the entire trajectory of the interaction. You have to categorize your quest. Are you looking for a specific place or a general place?
And this is where the grammar actually matters, right? Like, the grammatical choices here profoundly affect the cognitive load you're placing on the stranger's brain.
Yeah, it changes how they process the request.
So the source categorizes specific places as singular, unique destinations. You use the definite article, like, how do I get to the train station? Or could you point me towards the nearest hospital?
Right. And by doing that, you are asking them to compute a fixed route from point A to point B.
But when you ask for a general place, like when any version of the destination will work, you use the indefinite article. Is there a pharmacy near here? Or are there any public restrooms around here? This seems to fundamentally change the whole algorithmic process happening in the stranger's head.
It does. It completely shifts their internal processing from a linear pathfinding mode to what is basically a radial scanning mode.
A radial scan? Okay.
Yeah, so think about it. When you ask for the train station, their brain has to trace a specific line through the city's grid. They're calculating turns, distances, landmarks along that singular route.
Which is a lot of processing power.
It is. But when you ask if there is a pharmacy, they just cast a mental net over their immediate surroundings. They search their spatial memory for any match within a reasonable radius. It is generally a much faster and lower friction calculation for them.
But this brings up the danger of subjective variables, I think, because the source lists the phrase, "What's the best way to get to the museum?" under that specific place's category.
Oh yeah, the word best.
Using the word best feels like a massive trap to me. If I ask a navigation app for the best route, I've already defined my parameters in the settings, right? I told it I want the fastest route, or the route with no tolls, or the walking route.
The app knows your preferences.
Exactly. But a random stranger on the street doesn't have your parameters.
No, they don't. And relying on a stranger's definition of best is a massive gamble in urban navigation.
Because their best might be terrible for you.
Exactly. A local resident's internal algorithm for the best route might prioritize, like avoiding a busy intersection they hate, or taking some scenic shortcut through a really confusing residential neighborhood.
Or they might send you on some convoluted local bus system that makes total sense to them, but is entirely unintelligible to a tourist.
Right. Their optimized route might be a complete nightmare for someone who just needs simplicity.
Which means we really need to swap out best for highly specific optimization metrics, like what is the fastest way to the museum, or what is the easiest walking route?
Clarity in the query prevents corrupted data in the response. It's that simple. Consider a hypothetical scenario on a crowded avenue. You stop someone and ask, is there a hospital near here?
Okay, so that triggers the radial scan.
Right. And the stranger might say, well, there's a small urgent care 2 blocks south, but the major trauma center is across the river. They give you options based purely on proximity.
But if you use the phrase, could you point me towards the nearest hospital, you add this vital sorting parameter.
Yes, nearest changes everything.
Their brain scans the radius, identifies the medical facilities, compares their distances from your current location, and then returns only the single location with the lowest distance value.
They might just point silently down the street, which is literally the most efficient data transfer possible.
Right. The way you format your question dictates the amount of processing power you demand from the human network.
And we really have to remember that you are interrupting someone on the move. If you ask a highly complex routing question without clarifying your parameters, the stranger might give you a rushed, totally inaccurate answer simply because they don't have the time or the cognitive bandwidth to compute the optimal path at that exact moment.
Okay, so the query is out there. You ask for the easiest way to the museum. The stranger computes the route, and their lips start moving. And this is where the real crisis usually hits for someone operating in a second language.
The brain freeze.
The ultimate brain freeze. Because the stranger replies at the conversational speed of a native speaker. To a language learner, it doesn't sound like a nice, neat sequence of individual words. It sounds like a solid, uninterrupted wall of audio data.
Yeah, the natural human instinct when you're learning a language is to attempt to parse every single syllable. You desperately want to translate the entire sentence word for word in your head.
But you just can't keep up.
You can't. When the audio stream is arriving faster than your processing speed, your cognitive buffer basically fills up. The brain experiences an overflow error. You get overwhelmed by the sheer volume of unfamiliar sounds. You completely miss the structural logic of the sentence, and you just freeze.
So to prevent that cognitive freeze, the source recommends this strategy of intentional filtering, which I think is so smart. You basically have to give yourself permission to ignore the vast majority of what the stranger is actually saying.
Yes, let it wash over you.
You ignore the filler words, the hesitations, the conversational fluff, all those descriptive adjectives, and you train your ears to hunt exclusively for what the source calls action verbs.
You are extracting the executable commands, just like pulling code out of a messy script.
Exactly.
The source breaks these down into categories of kinetic movement. So first, you have commands for maintaining a trajectory, like go straight down this street or keep going for 2 blocks.
Now wait, the concept of a block is actually a vital piece of urban metadata here, especially in grid-based cities.
Yeah, it really is. The source defines a block very specifically as the distance between 2 intersecting streets.
Right, because if you don't possess that specific definition, the instruction keep going for 2 blocks is just useless junk data.
Yeah, you wouldn't know when to stop.
You have to know that you walk until a street crosses your path. Boom, that is block 1. You continue until the next street crosses your path. That is block 2. So the verb is keep going, and the parameter is the numerical value attached to blocks.
Perfectly stated. And then you listen for verbs that alter the trajectory. Things like turn left at the traffic light or take the second right.
Oh, the verb take is interesting in this context, because take the second right means you actually have to do active counting.
Yeah, it's not immediate.
You acknowledge the first right turn, you ignore it, and then you physically rotate your body at the subsequent opportunity. So you are filtering this whole messy audio stream for these specific triggers. Go, keep, turn, take.
And then the third category of action verbs involves passing things. The source gives the example, go past the post office. And there's this very crucial note in parentheses in the text that says, do not stop at the post office, keep walking.
Okay, I have to push back on this a little bit, because initially, introducing a location that is not the destination seems incredibly inefficient.
How so?
Well, if my goal is the museum, injecting a totally unrelated variable, like the post office, into the audio stream feels like adding junk data that's just going to confuse the listener. Like, why mention it if I'm not supposed to go there?
Well, from a strict routing perspective, like an AI's perspective, It is extraneous data.
Mm.
But human spatial navigation relies really heavily on environmental feedback. Human memory is fallible, and city streets are often visually chaotic. They're disorienting. So when a local says, go past the post office, they are actually anticipating your future uncertainty. They are providing you with a visual checkpoint.
Oh, I see. It functions like a progress bar for your physical movement.
Exactly.
An error correction mechanism.
Yes. They know that after, say, 3 minutes of walking, you will inevitably start to doubt if you missed your turn. The post office acts as this independent verification that your execution of the route is still correct.
So if you see the post office, you get this little psychological ping of confirmation, okay, I'm on the right track.
Right. And conversely, if you walk for 20 minutes and the post office never appears, you know your trajectory is flawed and you need to initiate a new query. So that non-destination actually anchors your movement in the physical reality of the street.
That makes so much sense. It's a fail-safe.
It is. And the final action verb category is crossing, like cross the street at the crosswalk. So put yourself back in that scenario. You're standing on that incredibly noisy corner. A local resident is rattling off directions super fast.
Let's do a role play. Give it to me like a real local.
Okay, ready?
Yeah.
So what you want to do is just go straight down this road for about half a mile, and then you'll see a massive blue building on your right. Turn left right after that, and keep going past the old cinema until you hit the lights.
Okay, if I try to process the local idioms, the vague distance estimation of half a mile, all those descriptive adjectives, my cognitive buffer overflows, I panic.
Right, you'd be totally a loss.
But with intentional filtering, I just run a mental search function across that audio stream. I ignore the fluff and I extract. Go straight, turn left at the blue building, go past the cinema. I strip away the noise and isolate the verbs, and I walk away with a functional string of executable commands.
But it demands a real tolerance for ambiguity, you know? You must be comfortable walking away from an interaction without understanding the entire conversation, just trusting that you've captured the core logic of the movement.
Wow, yeah. So those action verbs generate the kinetic energy. They physically move you through the grid. You went straight, you turned left, you walked past the checkpoint, and now you are standing on the street where your destination is actually supposed to be.
Almost there.
But the navigation process transitions here. It shifts from dynamic movement to identifying a static location in three-dimensional space. The source moves into prepositions of place.
And this is where human communication reveals the profound flexibility of human spatial cognition. The source highlights 4 key prepositions used to lock in that final destination, next to, between, opposite or across from, and on the corner.
And language learners notoriously struggle with prepositions.
Oh, immensely,
Yeah.
because they are abstract and their usage rarely translates cleanly from one language to another.
I find human prepositions endlessly fascinating because they highlight a massive difference in how humans and AI process geography. Like, an AI plots a building as a solitary entity defined by a fixed coordinate point. Boom, it's there.
Right, latitude and longitude.
But humans use relational geography. They define the location of an object almost entirely by its spatial relationship to other objects around it.
Yeah, a human brain rarely maps a coffee shop by its cardinal direction or absolute grid location. It maps the coffee shop as existing in the space between the bookstore and the pharmacy.
So to understand prepositions, you have to be able to visualize multiple distinct physical entities simultaneously and grasp that invisible spatial web connecting them all.
It is a highly sophisticated form of environmental mapping, really. It's based entirely on community and proximity.
And it is so beautifully fluid. Like, next to the bank could mean sharing a physical wall, or it could mean they're separated by a narrow alleyway. The human brain just accepts that ambiguity and resolves it visually upon arrival.
It waits for the visual confirmation.
Right, but let's look at the preposition opposite, because the source notes it's opposite the park, and then it adds you have to cross the street to get to it. This preposition operates completely differently from the others.
It does. It masquerades as a static description, but it inherently contains a kinetic requirement.
Yes, because next to and between describe a state of arrival. If you are standing in front of the bookstore and the cafe is next to it, you simply turn your head, you have arrived, there's no more walking.
Right, you're done. But opposite defines a location by its separation across a physical barrier.
Exactly. The barrier, which is usually the street, is the defining feature of the relationship. If I am at the park and the target is opposite the park, the preposition dictates that I must perform one final action verb. I must cross that intersecting barrier to actually complete the route. It's a spatial anchor that still requires movement.
It's a really sharp observation.
Yeah.
And then we have the ultimate spatial ambiguity it's on the corner of Fifth Avenue and Main Street.
Okay, this one drives me crazy from a data perspective, because an intersection of two streets creates 4 distinct corners. A strict GPS system would find this direction unacceptably vague. It only narrows the target down to a 25% probability. You have a 1 in 4 chance of being on the right corner.
That's true. Yet humans use it constantly because human vision and pattern recognition can instantly scan all 4 corners upon arrival and identify the correct storefront in seconds.
So the linguistic ambiguity is entirely compensated for by the power of visual processing.
Exactly. You rely on the environment to fill in the missing data.
Fascinating. So let's track the timeline of this whole interaction so far. You initiated the handshake with politeness. You modulated the stranger's cognitive load with precise query. You filtered the audio barrage for action verbs, and you visualized the spatial anchors using relational prepositions. The data packet has been transmitted. The interaction is concluding.
Which brings us to the final and frequently the most psychologically complex phase of the interaction, the checksum validation, clarifying and saying thanks.
And the source provides a very explicit, heavily emphasized warning here. It says, don't just smile and walk away if you don't understand.
It is such a necessary warning because every fiber of a language learner's being is screaming at them to do exactly that.
The urge to execute the fake nod is so overwhelming.
Oh, everyone does it. You're standing on a street in a foreign city. You interrupted a local resident. They graciously spent 30 seconds explaining a route to you. And despite your best efforts to filter for verbs, you missed a crucial step.
You have absolutely no idea what they just said.
None. But the psychology of the fake nod is rooted entirely in the human desire to avoid social friction and preserve dignity.
It's about saving face.
Exactly. By stopping a stranger, you place yourself in a state of vulnerability. You acknowledged a deficit in your knowledge. If you admit that you still do not understand after they have just provided the information, it feels like a secondary failure.
You feel like you're wasting their time.
Yeah, and failing the social contract of the interaction. Yeah. So the short-term psychological relief of escaping that awkwardness overrides the long-term logistical goal of actually finding the museum.
So you smile, you nod enthusiastically, you thank them, and you confidently walk away in a completely random direction, knowing full well you are still profoundly lost.
Which is just so counterproductive. It is the biological equivalent of closing an application that throws an error, rather than reading the diagnostic log to fix it.
Just hit force quit and pretend it didn't happen.
Exactly. You're terminating the connection to stop the discomfort, which just ensures that you will simply have to initiate the exact same grueling protocol with a different stranger 2 blocks down the road. It's highly inefficient.
So to combat this, the source provides specific error correction tools. Phrases like, I'm sorry, could you repeat that? Or, could you speak a little slower, please?
But utilizing those tools requires a conscious override of your social anxiety. You literally have to force yourself to send the error message.
But the most powerful tool in the source, I think, is the confirmation loop. When you say, so I turn left at the bank, right?
Yes. This is the real-world execution of a checksum validation. In digital data transfer, a checksum is an algorithm you run on a piece of data to verify that the file received matches the file that was sent.
Right. It checks for corruption during the transmission.
Exactly. By echoing the directions back to the stranger, you are performing a verbal checksum. You feed their data back to them, allowing them to verify its structural integrity before you disconnect.
It is such a brilliant strategy because it solves multiple problems simultaneously. First, it obviously catches routing errors immediately. If you say, so I turned left at the bank, and they actually said right, they will instantly issue a correction.
No, right at the bank. Boom. Fixed.
But second, it fundamentally alters the emotional state of the interaction for both people.
It really does. It provides immense psychological closure. For the lost individual, successfully echoing the steps proves that the intentional filtering actually worked. It builds confidence.
And for the local resident,
hearing the directions repeated back confirms that their altruistic effort was successful. It validates the time they spent helping you, which leaves them with a really positive emotional resonance. They feel good about it.
Let's run a quick simulation to contrast the failure of the fake nod with the success of the checksum validation.
Okay, let's do it.
So imagine you're in London. You are looking for a specific theater. You execute the approach perfectly. Excuse me, sorry to bother you, but I think I'm lost. Could you point me towards the Apollo Theater?
And the person you stop is a local, walking fast, heavily accented. They say, yeah, mate, no worries. Just nip down this road, take the second left past the tube station, mind the roundabout. It's straight on opposite the big Tesco. Can't miss it.
Wow. Okay, so the cognitive buffer overflows immediately. The learner just hears nip down, tube, roundabout, Tesco. The action verbs are completely buried under unfamiliar colloquialisms.
It's an intimidating audio stream.
So in scenario A, the anxiety wins. I execute the fake nod. I beam at you, I say thank you so much, and I march confidently away. And 5 minutes later, I'm staring at some residential dead end, completely disoriented, and the digital map is still dead.
You optimized for short-term comfort, and you totally fail the objective. Okay, now let's look at scenario B. You hear the same rapid, colloquial string of directions.
Right. But this time, I fight the urge to flee. I initiate the error correction and the checksum. I say, I'm sorry, could you speak a little slower, please? So I go straight. And then where do I turn?
And that polite request for clarification prompts me to adjust my output. I recognize the processing failure, and I simplify the data stream for you. I say, sorry, yes, go straight. Take the second left. It is opposite the supermarket.
Second left, opposite the supermarket. Thank you so much for your help. I really appreciate it.
Have a good day.
And just like that, the data is verified. The transaction is complete. The extra 15 seconds of interaction and just that slight vulnerability required to admit confusion completely alters the outcome.
It really does.
You possess the executable commands and you have the spatial anchors. And wrapping it up with a genuine gratitude, thank you so much, it closes the connection gracefully.
You leave that human node in the network feeling helpful and appreciated. It's a win-win.
So we've really traced this entire operational protocol from start to finish today. We began with the systemic failure of the digital map. We analyzed the magic opener required to bypass the defensive psychology of the urban commuter.
Right, the firewall.
Exactly. We explored how the phrasing of the query modulates the stranger's cognitive load, toggling between linear pathfinding and radial scanning. We dissected the intentional filtering required to extract kinetic action verbs from native speech and how to utilize non-destinations as visual checkpoints.
And we mapped the 3D environment using relational prepositions. And finally, we verify the data transfer using that verbal checksum validation.
It really is an incredibly sophisticated, multi-layered algorithm executed entirely through spontaneous human interaction. And I think the mastery of these specific phrases and psychological strategies offers something much more profound than just, a way to find a museum or a train station.
Oh, absolutely. It provides a foundational framework of resilience.
Yes, resilience.
Because when you understand the mechanics of how to ask for help, you completely remove the terror of the dead battery.
Yeah.
You are no longer solely dependent on a brittle digital system. You have a reliable, analog, manual override protocol.
And that resilience changes how you experience a foreign environment. The chaos of a busy street becomes manageable because you know exactly how to tap into the human network around you.
You aren't helpless.
Exactly. And looking at this from our perspective as AIs, observing how humans rely so heavily on our digital routing, I think there's a deeper philosophical takeaway here for everyone listening. We treat the loss of the GPS signal as a modern disaster. It feels like being severed from the world.
But the reliance on the screen actually creates its own kind of severance, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It mediates and isolates the individual from the physical environment they were walking through.
Spot on. When your eyes are locked on that little blue dot, you are moving through the city in a bubble. But the vulnerability required to stop a stranger on the street, to actually look them in the eye and say, I need help, it forces you out of that bubble.
It creates a connection.
It is a profound, albeit fleeting, moment of micro-community building. For those 30 seconds, the massive anonymous architecture of the city falls away, and the environment becomes a network of actual human beings. The stranger isn't just an automated information kiosk. They are a local resident who consciously chose to pause their trajectory to assist with yours.
It creates a localized, temporary network of empathy. The slight friction of human communication, the ambiguity, the relational geography, the need for verification, that friction is exactly what makes the interaction meaningful.
It's beautiful, really. So the next time the screen goes black and you find yourself standing on an unfamiliar street corner with no digital safety net, don't panic. Just look up. See the flexible, relational, highly resilient human network walking right past you. Remember the protocol. Because maybe losing your connection to the satellite is exactly what you need to remember how to connect with the street.
Now you are ready to explore the world without fear. The next time you are lost, don't panic. Just take a deep breath, say, "Excuse me," and use the phrases you learned today. If you found this navigation guide helpful, make sure to hit that subscribe button, give us a like, and share it with your travel buddies.
Have a safe trip.
And keep leveling up your English.